Hello everyone, welcome to Micah History and welcome to episode 4 of What If the United States Lost the Cold War. Now, of course, if you want to understand the context of this video, you will need to watch the first 3 episodes. Episode 2 was recorded and created by myself, but the other 2 were done by Julius Caesar because this is a collab that I am doing with him. And so, if you want to understand the context here, you will need to watch both his videos and my video so that you understand what's going on. Now, in the last episode, we described the different kinds of communism that emerged after the Cold War, as well as the states that emerged out of the former United States. And so, I'm going to assume now that you've already watched that because I will be continuing from here, starting by talking about the international scene after the Cold War. Now, with the collapse of the United States, Latin America is no longer under American influence. However, someone has to fill the power vacuum, and so in South America, all the countries except Guyana and Suriname fall under Brazilian influence, as Brazil tries to make South America somewhat of a bloc under its leadership, although only for mixed results. South Africa ends apartheid, while the communist states in Africa remain. Meanwhile, Portugal is finally unable to keep control of its colonies and decides to grant them independence in 1999. After its disastrous invasion of Pakistan, India decides to go back to being neutral, while Pakistan becomes a very loose Soviet ally. Malaysia and the Philippines become communist as the insurgents end up taking over. Now let's look at the Anglosphere. Now, as mentioned in episode 2, the United Kingdom was taken over by nationalists, and they wanted to establish firmer English dominance as democracy collapsed in the United Kingdom. Now, this did annoy, though, everyone else, and soon insurgencies began. Only Wales was able to peacefully secede. Scotland began its brutal war of independence, which was strongly contested by the United Kingdom, though the fighting mostly ended by 1992, and officially ended in 1995. In Ireland, things got much nastier, as the Troubles escalated into a full-on genocide. In 1992, a referendum was held to reunify the island, which was bitterly opposed by the Loyalists. They boycotted the election and began to cleanse the region of the Irish, so that they wouldn't have to deal with this problem again. Ireland and Scotland assisted the local Irish and pushed back the Loyalists by 1994. In 1995, the Soviets decided to get involved, and eventually peace was agreed to, with the creation of an independent Northern Ireland that would share power between the Irish and the Loyalists. However, the ethnic cleansing created a much clearer geographic divide between the Irish, mostly in the west, and the British, mostly in the east. Meanwhile, what has happened to the British monarchy, you might be asking? Well, they've actually fled to New Zealand, where they created the Kingdom of Australasia. Australasia became a safe haven for monarchies, with the Norwegian, Danish, Dutch, and Spanish royal families all fleeing there after their respective countries fell to communism. In 1999, Australia voted to become a republic, but it remained in the Commonwealth as a close friend. So, what is the Soviet Union doing now to take advantage of the loss of American hegemony and the collapse of the United States in general? Well, without the United States in Western Europe, the Soviet Union decided to spread its area of influence, and France, Spain, and Italy joined the Warsaw Pact in 1999. Followed by Portugal, Belgium, the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Greece, Turkey, Boston, Philadelphia, and New York in 2004. 2009, Scotland joined, followed by Cornwall in 2017 and Wales in 2020. The Soviets gained dominance over Western Europe and encouraged the transition to communism. However, not all countries successfully make the transition. Generally, the further east a country was, the easier it was to transition. And by the 2020s, countries like Greece and Italy had basically become fully communist, with France not far behind. Belgium and the Netherlands were also fairly communist, but Spain and Portugal, being on the edge of Europe and being very far from the Soviet Union, had a much harder time establishing communism, as there is a large population of dissidents against the domineering communist governments. In Scandinavia, they adopted what they called Scandinavian socialism, which combines an essentially capitalist baseline with heavy state intervention and a socialist government, which is good enough for the USSR. And the system was adopted in Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. In places where it was resisted, such as Sweden, it was made clear what happens when you resist the will of the proletariat. Soviet atrocities, though declared by the UN and International Human Rights Watch as a farce, are known throughout Europe and are maintained as an example of what happens when you cross a revolution, as a Swedish royal family was publicly executed in front of a jeering crowd in Moscow. However, the Soviet Union was not just expanding in Europe. In the Middle East, in 1990, the Soviets demanded that the Saudis remove their monarchy because the days of old imperialism, monarchy, and outdated institutions such as religion was over. Now, as you can expect, the Saudis refused, and so the Soviets decided to march through Iran and Iraq to prepare for an invasion. The invasion began in 1991 and rapidly progressed, with Soviet troops entering the holy city of Mecca. The Soviets quickly and easily overthrew the monarchy, but they sowed the seeds of their own destruction. This invasion is seen as an affront by many faithful Muslims, and it will not be easily forgotten. Now, while the Soviet Union proclaims 1991 as the year of victory and the beginning of the global revolution, the anti-communist forces around the world lick their wounds and prepare to resist what they see as tyranny. And so we get to 2001, 10 years after the great victory of the Cold War. Communism has been established nearly worldwide. The Soviet Union is more powerful than ever, having basically the entire European continent under its boot. And so it is invincible. Nothing can stop it, right? The problem is that on September 11th, a disgruntled Saudi leader, Osama bin Laden, decided to hijack 2 planes and land one in the Kremlin and the other in the Communist Party headquarters in Moscow. This ends up being the bloodiest terrorist attack in history. Seeing the devastating impact this had, he inspired the Saudis to rebel and reinstall the monarchy. The Soviets do not take this lightly, and they invade Saudi Arabia once again, as well as Afghanistan in retaliation for 9/11. The invasion of Saudi Arabia, which goes on with Yugoslav and Italian assistance, goes quite well. They establish the People's Republic of Arabia and kill the entire Saudi royal family, hundreds and hundreds of people, Bolshevik style. However, the new communist regime is weak, unpopular, and incompetent, and a civil war soon breaks out between the Sunnis and the Shias. As the Soviets eventually withdraw from Saudi Arabia, or I should say, the People's Republic of Arabia, things only get worse. Now, 10 years later, in 2011, ISIS emerged as a movement to restore the Islamic Caliphate against foreign aggression, and they waged war against the Arabian state, but were eventually put down with Soviet assistance in 2015. However, even though this seems like they failed, they had inspired the so-called Great Jihad, a worldwide movement of Muslims from Morocco to Iraq, who rise up against their communist and foreign oppressors. In Tunisia, they establish a more radical government, while in Libya it ends up causing a civil war. In Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood takes over. In Syria, they unsuccessfully try to overthrow Soviet puppet al-Assad, while in Iraq, Saddam Hussein brutally crushes the rebels. Meanwhile, in Yemen, a war breaks out between the Houthis in North Yemen and the communists in South Yemen, while with the former being brutally crushed by the powerful might of the Soviet army. Now, in 2021, in Afghanistan, though, things have not fared well. After 20 years spent in there, the Soviets end up withdrawing, having failed in their mission to spread communism to the Afghan people. In 2023, the withdrawal has had effects because the Soviets have now demonstrated to everyone how weak they really were. The Soviets, tired of these Muslims, decide to approve the destruction of the Dome of the Rock by its new ally Israel. And on the 7th of October 2023, the Dome of the Rock is blown up, which triggers Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, a joint invasion to annihilate Israel, with armies from Morocco to Pakistan participating. The only exception is Turkey, although it does not help the Soviets either. The Israelis and the Soviets are incredibly brutal and decide in retaliation to completely level Palestine and kill all prisoners of wars and anyone trying to attempt to enter Israel. Many are opposed to the Soviet government, even many Soviet citizens, and especially Muslim Soviet citizens as well as anti-communists. But this has little impact on the foreign policy. And so what will happen next? How will the Soviet Union end up getting out of this Middle Eastern mess? Well, we'll see next time. And next time, we will see episode 5, which will be once again recorded and hosted by Julie Caesar. So don't forget to watch it there, to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.